We're holding on 12b. Yud Beis Amid Beis. And Amar of Huna Breder of Yeshua. Right? I think Hashem that they're able to learn Torah every day. It's because we're learning we should have the Beis Hamikdash immediately. And we're learning Lulin Nishmas Avigdol the Basra Daf and this month I've been seeing. And for the first name of Avin David Ben Sarah and Dalia Getzel Eliezer Ben Begetziper. Okay. Amar of Huna Breder of Yeshua. We have a statement from Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua. He's a later Amira, friend of Rav Papa, student of Baya and Rava. Says, Pshita, it's obvious that Chelik Bechar v'Chelik Pashat Yavin le'echad Metzra. Let's say we have people that are inheriting, children that are inheriting the father. One of them is a firstborn, so he gets a double portion. One of them is a regular son. Of course, there's only one firstborn, right? So, so they're going to divide it into 2/3 and 1/3. So when they divide up, let's say it's land, so we know the rule is that there's Dina de Bar Metzra, that you want to give a person, the first rights of the property go to the one that owns the property on its border. So if we give him one property, give him the second property right next to it, that would be Bar Metzra. And the other one will take a property on the side, but not that you put that the other son straight in the middle of the two properties that belong to the firstborn. That wouldn't make sense. Yavamai. What happens if there was a woman whose husband passed away? So the brother comes in and marries the sister-in-law, the widow. And the rule is that he gets the inheritance of his brother plus his own inheritance. Let's say their father now passed away. So now they're getting the inheritance. So he gets his own portion, plus he gets the brothers. He took over his brother's position because he married his wife. So he gets another inheritance. So what do we say over there? Do we say that we have to give those two portions together, just like we did if it would be a firstborn? Or do we say that no, they come from different sides? They're not connected. So it says, Amar Abaya. Abaya says, interesting. Abaya is answering a question that a student is posing. It's exactly the same thing. My timer, what's the reason? Bechar Kai Rachmana. If you look at those verses, it actually says that V'haya Bechar Asher Teled Yakam Al Shem Achiv, that the firstborn son that will be born from that union will replace the deceased brother. The Gemara learns it that V'haya Bechar means that it's the oldest son, the oldest brother that's going to do the Yibam. And whatever the case is, if that's the oldest son that's doing the Yibam, then he's called the Bechar. He's called the Bechar, is the one that does it. So he gets his double portion, is like comparable to the firstborn son that gets a double portion. That's what Abaya says. Rava says no. Amar Kra v'haya ha'bechar haviyasik bechar vein chalakasik bechar. It says v'haya ha'bechar. That means that the marriage, the union that takes place, is the older son is the one that has the rights to do that union. And that doesn't mean that they divide it like a firstborn. It's only the union is like a firstborn, right? Which means the union goes to the firstborn. Okay, but not that they divide it, which means according to Rava, if a Yibam takes place, so the child will get his own portion from one side of the property, and he gets his brother's portion from anywhere else in the property. It doesn't have to be right next to his. It's not like they have an obligation to provide him with the property that's right next to his.
Are we assuming that every piece of property is the same size?
That's a good question. Let's say in cases where it is. So then will he be able just to take that? But there's no difference in value. I mean, there's going to be issues coming up with that logic. Jonathan's asking if it's all the same size.
Is already taken into account that 200,000 is the firstborn is already given double?
No, ignore that. Ignore that. The one that passed away is, let's say there was no firstborn. Let's say the firstborn was a sister. One that passed away was a regular child. And then question is, now that the brother married the widow, and he gets both portions, but they have to give it to him together or not. Machlekes Abaye and Rava. Who dezavin ara ametra de beinasha? Was a person that bought a property right next to his father's property. I see some of the commentators here say that he bought a property right next to his father-in-law's property. But
yeah,
Rabbeinu Gershon writes that. But
Rashi
says it's his father. They have a note on that. Well, then the father passed away, and the children are dividing up the property. So Kikapalgu, when they're dividing the property, Amalei, Pligale Amitzray, I would like the property that's right next to the one that I purchased.
That's his father's, right?
Well, his father had a lot of property, but he purchased one adjacent to the father's property. Now he's asking for the property that's right next to his, and not one down at the other end.
Okay.
Because he already owns one, so he wants to get the.
Oh wow. So it'd be that'd be 3 lots together.
Well,
his own, his father's is to his right, and then the other one is to his left.
Yeah, let's say there's 3 properties together. He wants the 2 on the left side, not one on the left, one on the right.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
One side, that's coming up. That's coming up. Well, Rava says, they say that, yeah, we have to do this if that's what he says. This is called the expression here that's being used is that we force on them not to behave like Sdaim. Now, Sdaim is where just to make someone lose. In other words, here, what's the difference to the brothers if he takes the property that's next to his or not, if they're the same value? So the only reason why they would say no is because they just in spite, just to make sure that he doesn't gain anything. We say kaifin al midas time, that we can force the brothers not to behave like that, and you have no loss. Why are you being so adamant about getting that field specific like that? You just want to harm him. You just want him to have a harder time. So that's kaifin al midas time, which basically means the rule of we're going to apply the rule of bar mitzvah, and we're going to say that this guy's benefiting and you don't lose anything. You should just let him benefit. Well, Maskefler Rav Yosef says 1 second. That's not so simple, because Amrile, they could say to him, Amrile Achai, the brothers will say, no, we consider that field to be a very special field. It's a precious field, and we're losing when we give that field to you. They can claim we don't want to give up that field just because you have a property next to it. Now, Rashi adds in that this is talking about a Sedei Beis Habal, which is that it's watered by the rain. And when fields are watered by the rain, it's very possible that some fields get the growth in there is much better than other ones. So they can say that field is a special field. Everything that grows on that, it's like the same soil as everything else. But the rain, the way it falls, whatever, it produces differently. So they can claim that there's some benefit to it, that field, and they don't want to give it up. So Rabbi Yosef says that it's not necessarily so that the brother that bought a property right next to the field is going to get that the field that's adjacent to his. Rabbi Yosef, and the halacha is like Rabbi Yosef. Okay, now trey arsa trey nigri. Let's say there's a different type of field, not a base abal, but this is a base ashlachan. This is a field that has water that's next to it. It has a spring or something like that. So here, there's two fields next to two rivers, two canals. Yeah. There's two fields, and each one has its own river. Two canals. If one of them owns a field next to it, then for sure he can't claim that this one's better than this because each has their own water source. So they each have their own water source. So just give him the one that your field is anyways going to have a water source. There's nothing you can claim about that. Rav Yosef says, one second, that's not so. Just because you have your own water source, that doesn't mean that that's never going to dry up. Sometimes one dries up, another one doesn't. They can say that we have a concern that maybe the one that you want to give us is going to dry up. Why that one more than this one? He doesn't say. But whatever the case is, they can claim that they feel that that one's better. Hilchos like Rabbi Yosef, the halachos like Rabbi Yosef. Harti achad negra. Let's say they both have the same water source. It's a field going between the two, going out along the edge of both of them. So then, Rabbi Yosef, here Rabbi Yosef admits that there's really nothing they can claim. So why is this field better than this one? There's nothing they can claim. They both have the same water source. Abaya says to Rabbi Yosef, Matziyam Bina da afish arise. The brothers can claim that the reason why we don't want to give you the field that's adjacent to your other field, right? Remember, he purchased the field that was right outside his father's property. Now he's asking for the field that's right next to it in the inheritance. They can claim that the reason why we're giving you, on page 12b, the reason why we don't want to give you that field is because we would like to have sharecroppers on both sides of us. It's going to help us protect our field. So we actually gain from you losing. Better for us to be like that. So the Hilchos Rabbi Yosef. The Gemara says that the halachos like Rabbi Yosef, that we don't say that because afushe lav milsi. The fact is, you need your own sharecropper, and just that extra bit that you're going to gain of protection because you have sharecroppers on both sides, says we don't consider that to be significant, and that's significant benefit. That insignificant benefit is not going to change the halacha of giving the other person the bar mitzvah, the field that's closer to his. We're not going to let just every negligible difference say that, okay, we're dropping the laws of bar mitzvah because this guy's claiming that there's some benefit to it. Okay. We're on top of 13. It says chad gisa nagra v'chad gisa nahara. Let's say one side has the canal and one side has a river. Now a river is better than a canal because canals can sometimes dry up, but the river is more stable. It's going to be, he'll have water all the time. So, and now when they're coming to divide it, yeah. So, if we're going to divide it, let's say it's like what we're saying, you see the picture of in Rashi. There's so one end has a river and one end has a canal, or the opposite. Canal and a river, right? Yeah, perpendicular. So now if you divide it, straight down, then one person gets half the river, another person gets the river and the canal. If you divide it diagonal, then one person only gets the river, like diagonal, right where the canal and the river meet. Then one person only gets the canal, and one person only gets the river. So how are you going to divide this where everyone should get an equal portion? So the Gemara explains, Rashi puts this in, that palgan la bekarnazal, that you divide it with a with corners. That means you turn the whole thing into eighths, and yeah, like a pizza. And then each person will get half one triangle next to the canal, one triangle next to the river, and then we do the same on the other end, which is further away, one triangle further away from the canal and further away from the river. So everyone has exactly an equal. In order to do this, you have to divide it into eighths.
How does that work with pay though? You only have 3 corners, or is that just that?
I think each field, each corner is going to have its own. Each one's getting four slices. Yeah. Right.
In this photo here, Shimon and Reuben are not next to any river at all.
Yeah, yeah, and that's why they had to do that equally, because if you look over here, this one's also not next to it.
Yeah.
So they're dividing
Oh,
it
so
like
these
that.
are 2 brothers.
Yeah,
It's
there's
not
two
like-
brothers, but each one wants to get half of the river, half of the canal. So then when we get, okay, how distant from it? He's getting closer to the canal. He's getting closer to the river, right?
Okay,
And
I
then
thought it was like.
So dividing it into 8. Okay.
It would complicate things up if there were more brothers.
Everyone always likes to say they know there's a few pages in the Gemara that have pictures on them. It's not so common, but everyone remembers that page. They always want to know, like, I wonder what that picture is about. Anyway, it's that triangle we had in Bab Metzia. Remember with the meat, cut it in a triangle. And then in Sukkah we had the circles, the round sukkah. Givalea said Traklin. We said when it comes to a big hall, it's not big enough to be a hall, then if they're going to divide it, then one can't force the other to divide it. Then if you won't have the name still on it. Has to be big enough that when you divide it, it's still considered a hall. And each one can get half of it. What happens if they want to divide, if one of them wants to divide it, but it's not enough, it's not big enough. So what do? Rav Yehuda says, Is Dina the good yaga? Very simple. One person says, either you estimate how much it's worth and pay, or I'll estimate how much it's worth and I'll pay you. I'll buy the other one out. And that way, one person will get this property or hall, and the other one will get the money. It's the value of half of it. Buy the other out, buy the other partner out. Rav Nachman says, no, we don't do that. That to buy the other partner out. If it can't be divided, then they just continue the partnership. Even though one wants to divide it, says, well, tough luck. So if they both wanted to divide it, that's a different story. But otherwise, we don't say that we'll buy the other one out. We say we continue the partnership. Amalei Rabba Rav Nachman. Rabba says to Rav Nachman. Rabba's like a student. He says, according to you, but you don't say that you buy the other one out. What are you going to do if the example here is a firstborn and a regular child that inherited the father? Now, why do we have to use this example? You could have used the regular example. It's talking about that if it's something they could split, let's say it's a kosher animal, so they'll say, okay, we'll shecht it, and you take half the meat, and it's fine. That's fine. They can split it. But here it's a non-kosher animal. The only thing you can do with it is work. Now, if it would be you would say, well, you work one day and I work one day. But because it's a bachar and a pashat, so it's not really split so equally, because one of them gets 2/3. So then how are you going to divide that? And the same thing would apply if it was a slave. They inherited a slave. What are you going to do with the slave? 2/3. So Amalei says, so that's not a problem. He says he works one day here and he works 2 days there. The cleaning lady, she shows up every 2 days. This and another 2 days she works over there. One house is a little cleaner than the other. Okay, that happens. And same with the cow. Well, it's not a cow; it's a camel or something, or a donkey. The horse. Okay. Meisvei, the Gemara has a question. We see that this isn't so because let's say there were two partners that owned the slave, non-Jewish slave, and one of them said he released his partnership. So the slave turns out that he's now half slave and half free, because one of the partners released him, the other partner didn't. So what does he do? So he will serve the master one day, and one day he serves himself. That means he gets paid for one day's work, and one day's work he works for free, because one day he's a slave, he doesn't get paid. So Divrei Beis Hillel. This is what Beis Hillel says. Beishamai says to Kantem es Rabbi es atzmai leita Kantem. He said you're fixing the solution. You have a solution here for the master. How does the master pay him? But you didn't solve the problem with the slave himself, because Lisa Shivchei Yachal, the slave can't get married. He can't marry a maidservant because half of him is free. Lisa Baschayra Yachal, he can't marry a free girl because half of him is a slave.
They have a slave that also has a family.
So there's two options there. It's either a Jewish slave or a non-Jewish slave. A non-Jewish slave can have a non-Jewish family working for the master. The Jewish slave, yeah, he has a family, and all the children belong to the master, and he's a slave, and his wife is a slave. An Eved Ivri can also have a family, and he can also what an Eved Ivri can do is an Eved Ivri can also live with the non-Jewish maidservant, and the children will belong to the master. Okay, here we have someone that's not an Eved Ivri. He's an Eved Knani. He's a non-Jewish slave, and half of him is now Jewish, not a slave at all. Not half of him is an Eved Ivri. He's a non-Jewish slave, or he's a full Jew. So then he can't marry. Yeah, it would be interesting. Maybe we can just make him into an Eved Ivri. I hear what you're saying. Yeah, Reb Daniel, you hear Jonathan's question. Maybe make him into an Eved Ivri. He's half non-Jewish, half non-Jewish slave, but a Jewish slave is allowed to marry a Shivcha Kananis. He's an Eved Ivri. That's only if he was married before, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work, because only if he's married before to a Jewish woman would we give him a non-Jewish wife. And here he could never have been married. Yeah. He's not allowed to be released. Hillel is pointing out. We don't just go ahead and release him. However, the mitzvah of Beis Shammai says, the entire world was created just to procreate. The world wasn't created to be desolate. The world was created to fill it, to inhabit it. And so therefore, that mitzvah is stronger than the prohibition of not to release a slave, and it overrules that prohibition, and it overrides that prohibition. And so therefore, we release the slave. We force the master to free him. And then, one second, just free him. So what happens to the value that he had? He says, no. We put a debt on the slave that he has to work off. It's like a student loan. That he has to work it off the rest of his career. He has to work off the value to pay half of his value back to his master. Yeah.
The one that
Yeah.
You,
The first one already released him. The second one, according to Beis Shammai, we force him to release him, and what's going to be with the money? He's going to buy himself out over time, right? Well, what we're seeing now, and then it turns out that the Gemara finishes. It says v'chazer Beis Hillel ha'is k'divrei Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel in themselves retract it, and they agree with Beis Shammai about this, that we force the master to release him. Now, what we're seeing is the whole reason why we're forcing the master to release him, and is going to get paid for that. That's because we have a mitzvah to inhabit to settle the world, settle the earth, right? So if that's the case, Yeah, what was that philosopher that they quote that was against too many children? Mecca, and not Machiavelli. Is that Mecca? Some anyway, the Torah doesn't really hold to that. It says we just continue to inhabit the earth, right? So what we're seeing here is that the whole reason why we'll allow that why the whole reason why we'll do this thing of buying the other person out is because of the mitzvah of l'sheves yitzara. But in another situation, and we won't say that you buy the other person out. Now we have a kasha on who was the first opinion? Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says we say good ayagud, that when we have a situation where something that you can't just divide, you take half and you take half, you can't do that because it's not big enough to do that, right? So we say, well, one person will buy the other one out. But over here, we're saying that the slave is going to buy the other one out. Slave is half owner because the free person is half free. So he's half owner, and they're partners basically. The slave himself plus his master are partners in his body. So he's telling the other one, I'm going to buy you out. And the only reason why you can do that is because of l'sheves yitzara, because we want to procreate, and he's not able to get married. So the Gemara says, Shani Hassam, the agadika good leka. In order to do this, that one person will buy the other one out, you have to be able to do it with both options. Both options need to be there. Be able to say either you buy me out or I'll buy you out. And since this can only work one way, because he can never sell himself back to his master to become a slave again. So it can only go one way. So then he can't force him to do buy me out or buy you out. He can't do that. So how does it work? Well, that's because of l'sheves yitzara, because of the mitzvah to procreate. So then we allow it. But if there would be other scenarios where you don't have that option of you buy me out or I'll buy you out, then we would say that that it doesn't work. That you don't do that. You just stay as a partner. Yeah. So in other words, we don't have a kasha on Rabbi Yehuda now that he holds that you can say I'll buy you out or you buy me out, because that's in the case where you can do both options. But if you can't do both options, then Rabbi Yehuda would agree.
Why would the first person be missing? If he missed it, he was missing him, both would release him.
No, only the master that
The one that he was told.
Hill is pointing out why did the first master release him? Maybe he released him because he poked out an eye or a tooth, right? So, but he's asking that then both should have released him. But I think that only the master that did that has to release him. I think that would be, or whatever other reason, he just decided he wants to release him. It's a prohibition, but he violated it. He released him.
This is pretty common. Buy-sell clauses and contracts is pretty common nowadays too, especially in real estate deals. The idea is that you need both sides because you want to set a price where the guy can say, "Oh, I don't like your price. I'll just buy you then."
So it needs to work both ways. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Work that it's even for that it's fair for both of them.
Yeah, because one guy is saying it's fair because I'm willing to sell my share for that amount. So you should like it too.
So now the next case is a continuation of this. Tashma, come and listen. Let's say there's two brothers, one is poor and one is wealthy. And the father left them a bathhouse and an olive press. So asan l'schar, if it was made to rent out, if it's that type of thing where people come and they rent it, and then the income comes in, so then very easy, they can share it, and the profits will go to be divided equally, right? That's a good investment. So but if it wasn't made to be rented out. Yeah, I went to Toronto this past year for to father and son Shabbos, and No, but there they put us in a house to say I was a wealthy person. They had a private mikveh. We stayed in the basement. The next door over was like a mikveh. Was in the house itself was a mikveh.
Is it connected to the house?
No, it was in the house itself. He had his own mikveh. But it was clearly not able to be like for public use. It was like it was mamish in the house. It was a mikveh now. It was only for the people that lived there. So anyway, here you have he has a merchatz. It's not made to be rented out. No one's going to use it. Or he has this Beisabad, this olive press. No, it's not for public use. It's not set up like that. So Harayasher Melani, so the wealthy person can tell to the poor one, there's two brothers here. They're inheriting the father. So he says, look, he said, I don't want to divide. I want both of them. And I want or I'm keeping it. If you want to use it, feel free to use it. Go get olives and bring them in this, or go get slaves and come heat up the water. Which obviously the poor brother doesn't have olives and he doesn't have slaves to heat up the water. And it becomes something that he can't really use. So for the poor man, it's basically useless. And for the wealthy man, it's like this is a great luxury. And he doesn't have to divide it. In others, the poor one would probably say, buy me out. Give me the cash. I want the money. The brother's saying, no, I'm not paying anything. You can use it if you every other day or whatever. So the question is, on Rav Yehuda, why can't he say, buy me out? And you know the answer already. We had it in the last Gemara. It says, Sasamnami gudeka agadleka. Because he can only tell to the brother, you buy me out. But the brother says, no, you buy me out, and that's impossible. Because he's a poor man, he's not able to buy him out.
In this case, the wealthy brother, this might not really be a loss for him if he
Buys the other one out.
buys the other one out.
Right. The only thing is he doesn't want to. You see, the wealthy brother is gaining from both sides here. He doesn't have to pay the other guy to buy him out because he can never use it anyway. He doesn't have olives and he doesn't have money to heat it.
But wouldn't make the law of Solomon contemplate? This guy's really wealthy, it's not gonna make a difference. Loss for him.
It is. If for him to give half the value is a loss. Right?
Because he's really wealthy.
It's still a loss. We don't say that just because he's wealthy, the money doesn't matter. We say every penny counts. That's how he got wealthy. Okay. Tashima. Right? Kol she'ilu, come and listen. Kol she'ilu chalak k'shmeil of chalkim imlam malam meisa b'damim. It says clearly in the Mishnah. What are we making ourselves crazy over here? Machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Nachman. If we say you take it and I'll buy you out, or I'll take it and I'll buy you out, or you take it and you'll buy me out. Why are we saying that there's a machlekes about this? Where Rav Nachman says we don't do this. The Mishnah says clearly that anything that's not going to keep its name if it's divided, because it's going to be doesn't have the same use. If it's divided, then then you estimate its value, and one person buys the other one out. It says clearly in the Mishnah. So it's a raya to Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Nachman. Seems like he's wrong. Well, the Gemara says Tanai here. It's not so, because it's actually a machlekes Tanaim. You're right about that Mishnah, but there's another source which has two opinions in there, and Rav Nachman would follow the other opinion. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. Tolat shir vani pachis. Let's say there's a courtyard that's not 8 cubits square, which means that they can't divide. Let's say it's only 7. So one of them wants to divide, and but it's not big enough for each of them to have the full usage, because it needs to be 4 cubits each. The other one that says, no, I don't want to divide. I don't want to be left with so small. So you can't compel him to divide. So the guy that wants to divide it up says, you know what? You take the 4 and I'll take 3. He's going to want money also, but he says, you take the 4 and I'll take the 3. So Shaimanai, we listen to him. That's the first opinion. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says no. we don't listen to him. Pechidami, what's the case? You know, so he's trying to compel the other one, and the other one saying, no, I don't want to do that either. If it's exactly as we stated, my time to Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. Why? What's the reason why Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says we don't listen to him? It must be that we're missing some words over here. It says it has to be. You have to say it like this. He says you take the correct amount, which is 4 amas, and I'll take the lesser amount. And everyone agrees that we listen to him because the guy is Michael. He's giving up one portion, one amma. Or if he says you buy me out or I'll buy you out, then we also listen to him. Also, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says no, we don't listen to him. So in other words, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel is saying that we don't do the you buy me out or I'll buy you out. That's the part that we're arguing about. Oh, if that's the part they're arguing about, then that's exactly the machlekes Rav Yehuda and Rav Nachman, where we have here a machlekes of Tanoim, and Rav Nachman must have had Rav Shimon ben Gamliel's view, and Rav Yehuda has the Tanakama. Now, why don't we ask, Lema Ketanai, why is this a machlekes Rav Yehuda and Rav Nachman? We have a Tanaic source. We don't like when the Tanaic source is the same as Amoraic source. It could be because it's in a brisa, and you can't claim that Rav Yehuda knew of this brisa. And Rav Nachman, he had a source. He had a source for this, but he can't claim that he knew of the machlekes, that they should say that each one should be paskening like that opinion. Yeah, maybe we only say lemech tanai when it's a mishnah. Maybe we'll have to go through Shas the second time and look at that. Okay. Next time around. The Gemara says, like, not necessarily is the machlekes in the brisa exactly the way we put it. Leilam kidiktani. Really, the machlekes is where they're not arguing about good or yagud. Good or yagud means you buy me out or I'll buy you out. They're not arguing about that. They're arguing about you take 4 and I'll take 3. The comment, my time to Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. So why should Reb Shimon ben Gamliel say that's not acceptable? Because he can say to him, Ibidami, if you want me to pay the guy that's getting the 4. Says if you want me to pay for the fact that you're getting less, and I should pay you less lidami lemitlach, I don't have the money. Matana leinichali. If you're just giving it to me as a gift, I don't want gifts. So someone that hates gifts, it lives longer. It's a verse in Mishnah. It says you live long if you don't accept gifts. Okay. Amalei Abayla Rav Yosef. Abayah says to Rav Yosef, Other Rav Yehuda the Shmoli. This opinion of Rav Yehuda, where you can buy a person out, that is actually Rav Yehuda is following his teacher Shmuel. The Tanana was taught in the Mishnah. The Mishnah said that there's certain things that we don't divide. What are those things? That's talking about scrolls, holy scrolls. We don't divide them because it's not respectful. Now, Amar Shmuel says, that's only if it's in one scroll. You have, the scroll of the prophets. You have a Torah, and this one says, well, I'll give you the Bereshis part, or something. I'll give you still halfway through Vayikra, divided in half. That we don't do when it's in different scrolls. However, B'shnei Krichas, if it's in 2 different scrolls, Chalkan, then they can divide it. You take one, and I'll take the other one. They'll study it. And then that'll be what they do. Maybe they knew the other portion already. Maybe this one is getting a Shmuel and this one's getting a Malachim, and he studied it already. So Chalkan, each one will take that portion. But if we say, like Rav Nachman, that you can't buy the other person out, my area 1 second. Over here, why do we say that the whole problem over here is only when it's in one portion, even if it's in 2 portions? The fact that one person is getting one and the other one's getting the other one that itself is like buying another one out
Fun in terms of scrolls.
in scrolls.
Is that like physical scrolls?
Yeah. The Gemara answers, Tigmar Rav Shalman, but his name writes him. It's not that the other person doesn't want to do this. The other person also wants to do this. When did we have a machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Nachman? That's when one person says, no, I don't want to divide it. But here we're talking about where they both do want to divide it. So then what's the chiddush? The chiddush is if they both want to divide it, because sometimes we say that we don't divide scrolls. It says, well, that's only if it's in one scroll. But if it's in two scrolls, then each one can take one portion. And it has to do with the respect for the scrolls. It doesn't have to do with compelling the other person. You're right. Compelling the other person would be problematic over here. Because let's say he says, no, I want both scrolls. Let's say one guy
Like
says,
Sefer Torah has
Yeah.
5 scrolls in it.
Yeah.
So you can't divide it.
Right. But if it's in different scrolls,
And
then they
that,
can divide.
Sefer in different scrolls.
It won't be a
ratios.
kosher Sefer Torah.
Right.
We're not supposed to do it like that. Let's say in the prophets they have divided. They have sometimes they have different. We don't have it in Chabad, but the other communities they have the scrolls of the prophets where they read the Haftarah scrolls. You have to study it. Okay. Amar Meimar. Meimar says Hilchas Istina to Godayagad. We pass on like Rabbi Yehuda that you can compel the other person to buy you out or you buy him out. Amalei Rav Ashi la Meimar. Hadar Rav Nachman. What are you gonna do with Rav Nachman? Rav Nachman says we don't do that. Amalei Le Shmieli says I never heard of that opinion. Kalei Malei Svirle, which means not that I never heard of it, but I don't hold of it. The law he doesn't hold of it. Vaha Rabba Barchinna Rav Dimi Barchinna. Both sons of Rav Chinna. Shavaklu Avu Tarti Amasa. The father left him 2 maidservants. Chada, one of the maidservants, Yada Afya Bishule. One of them did cooking and baking. Chada Yada Pilcha V'Navla. And one of them did sewing. What's Navla? Is weaving, sewing and weaving. Yeah. So 2 maids. Yeah, you wonder like what people do with all their maids. So this is what they do. So Vasalakami de Rava, they came to Rava, and obviously they wanted both, right? Each of them want both. Amalu lestina de godayagad. It says, well, we don't do that. You buy each other out. It says, I'll take both and you'll take the money. It says, we don't do that. You want money for half, of course, money for one. The Gemara says, well, if that's the case, then Reb Nachman's right. You told me that Allah is like Rabbi Yehuda, where you can buy the other one out. Over here, we don't buy the other one out. So Shani Hasam de Lamarmi by Leitavayo, Lamarmi by Leitavayo. That's because both of them wanted both. And that's why we don't do that. That's because over there, no one wanted out. No one wanted to just take one. If he would say, you take one and I'll take one, that wouldn't be considered good ayagad. Gemara asks 1 second, you can't say that. You take one and I take one. But we'd say that by the scrolls, you take one and I'll take one. We said that we could divide it up. Gemara says, no, you're confusing. Because we already said, that's when each one said, I'm willing to take that one. But over here, no one was willing to say, I'll take the maid that only cooks, and you'll take the one that. No one wanted to say that. Each one wanted, but if they were willing to say that, then that would be fine. As we see by the scrolls, that is fine. Okay, let's leave the Gemara over here. Start a new discussion on the halachas of Sifrei Torah and about the Tanakh. Okay.